Welcome to Life Stories. Today, we bring you a tale of betrayal, self-discovery, and empowerment. It's a story of a woman who found herself excluded, humiliated, and dismissed by the very people she had tried so hard to fit in with. But what seemed like the end was just the beginning of her journey. In reclaiming her power, she learned that sometimes the greatest strength comes from the moments when we stand up for ourselves and embrace who we truly are. Join us as we dive into this incredible journey of transformation and liberation. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel to start today's story. It was supposed to be a celebration, a moment to honor my mother-in-law's birthday, a gathering of elegance and tradition, held at a prestigious venue overlooking New York City's skyline. But as I walked into the venue, the first thing I noticed wasn't the opulent decor or the sound of clinking glasses. It was the empty seat at the table. My seat, a small detail, yet it was the one thing I couldn't ignore. It sat there, vacant, conspicuously absent from the neatly arranged place settings. I glanced around, hoping it was just an oversight. But no, my husband, Jack, was already seated next to his mother, his family surrounding him, all taking their places as if nothing were amiss. Jack chuckled when he saw me standing there, confused. "Oops, guess we miscounted," he said, his tone light, almost amused by the situation. I stood frozen for a moment, feeling the weight of the unspoken words hanging in the air. The laughter of his family echoed in my ears, but the warmth I once felt from them now seemed distant, cold. The hurt began to seep in, but I couldn't show it. "Not here, not now. Seems I'm not family," I said, my voice steady despite the sudden wave of humiliation that crashed through me like a tidal wave. The words were simple, yet they held so much truth, so much weight. I turned away from the table, my heart pounding in my chest, and walked out of the restaurant. I didn't know where I was going at first, my steps mechanical, driven by something beyond my control. I only knew one thing. I wasn't going to let this go. I wasn't going to let them dismiss me, make me feel less than I was, like some outsider in a world I had been trying so hard to fit into. But as I stepped out onto the bustling New York streets, the humiliation burned through my veins. Not a single tear fell. Instead, a strange calmness settled over me, and I knew then that I had made a choice. I pulled out my phone, opened the event management app I had built my career on, and began making changes. I had 30 minutes. 30 minutes before they would realize what I was doing. Before the truth of my actions would become clear. That was more than enough time. In those 30 minutes, I made sure their precious birthday dinner would never happen. I canceled the venue, the catering, the flowers, the entire event that had been so meticulously planned. The thought of their faces when they discovered what I had done made my chest tighten. But there was no regret. Just an eerie calm, as a woman who had built a career out of making things happen for others. This was the only thing I could control. But before I continue, I should tell you a little about myself. 5 years ago, I was just Emma Thompson, a rising star in the world of event planning. I had built my business from the ground up, creating extravagant galas, weddings, and corporate events for the most elite clients in the city. It wasn't easy, but I loved it. Every detail, every flower arrangement, every perfectly timed speech. It was all my work. My vision, brought to life. I had made a name for myself, and that name became synonymous with success. And that's when I met Jack. He was everything I thought I wanted. A charming, handsome man with a smile that could light up a room. His family was old money, steeped in New York's high society. He had the confidence of someone who had never had to worry about where his next meal was coming from. We met at one of my events, and it was as if fate had conspired to bring us together. Jack was different from the men I had known. He wasn't obsessed with appearances or wealth like the others. He seemed genuine, interested in me for who I was, not just what I could do for him. It wasn't long before I fell in love with him, and when he proposed, I said yes. But deep down, I knew there were cracks in the facade. His mother, Eleanor, didn't approve of me. She made it clear from the start that I wasn't part of their world. But I ignored the signs. Told myself that Jack and I were different. That we could overcome the differences between us. Our wedding was a grand affair. The social event of the season. But even then, there were whispers. Eleanor, ever the perfectionist, had opinions on everything. The venue, the food, the guest list. Nothing was ever quite good enough for her. I compromised where I could. But I held firm on certain things. Jack played peacemaker, but I began to notice how often he deferred to his mother. I told myself it was just family dynamics. That it didn't matter, but deep down, it did. As the years went on, the undermining became more systematic. My career, the very thing that had given me identity and purpose, was treated as a mere hobby by Jack's family. Despite using my event planning company for their events, they belittled my work, dismissed my opinions. The woman who had built a reputation for herself in one of the most competitive industries in the world was suddenly a side note in their world. And Jack? He never defended me. He would shrug it off and say, "That's just how my mother is. Don't take it personally." But it was personal. It always had been. And so, there I stood, outside that restaurant, realizing I was never going to be accepted into the family that Jack had promised would one day be mine. They had shown me, time and time again, that I didn't belong. And tonight, when I stood up and walked out, I was finally starting to accept that. As I walked out of that restaurant in New York, the reality of what had just happened settled over me like a heavy blanket. The pain of being excluded. Of being so blatantly ignored by the family I had worked so hard to fit into. Burned deeper than any hurt I had ever known. But I wasn't broken. I was steady. A quiet strength had begun to rise within me. A strength I hadn't fully recognized before. I didn't cry. Not yet. The tears would come later. But for now, I felt something else. A sharp, cold resolve. I had worked too hard to get where I was. To let anyone make me feel small. To let them think they could control me. That wasn't going to happen. Not now. Not anymore. As I walked away, I pulled out my phone. I opened the event management app I had used for years to manage my high-profile clients. The app I had built my reputation on. It was time to take back control. I had 30 minutes. 30 minutes before they would realize what I had done. Before they understood that the entire celebration, the grand birthday dinner, had been cancelled. The venue, the catering, the flowers, the beautiful, lavish plans I had so meticulously crafted for them. All gone. I had made sure of that. But there was something else that had been gnawing at me. Something I hadn't fully understood until that moment. The deep sense of betrayal I felt from Jack. It wasn't just about the seat at the table. Or the exclusion. It was about everything. The way his family had treated me over the years. The way they had made me feel like an outsider. As if my love and my success didn't matter. But there was more. I had known there were cracks in the perfect picture they had painted. And it was only a matter of time before the truth would come out. And it did, in the most unexpected way. The morning before our flight to New York, I had found a message on Jack's phone. I never checked his phone. I respected his privacy. But that morning, something felt off. I don't know why I looked. Maybe I had already sensed that something was wrong. But when I saw the message preview from someone named Vanessa, my heart dropped. It was a text that read, "Can't wait to see you in New York. Have you told her yet?" The message sent a chill down my spine. I opened the thread. There they were, Jack and Vanessa, messaging back and forth. Making plans for the trip. Discussing their future. And yes, there it was. A baby. Their baby, due in 4 months. I felt a wave of nausea rise in my throat. I had known something was off. Had sensed the distance between us. But this was the confirmation of everything I had been afraid of. I had been living a lie. Jack wasn't the man I thought he was. He wasn't the man I had married. The realization that he had been involved with someone else for months. Someone his family had always adored and expected him to marry before he met me. Was a bitter pill to swallow. I didn't confront him right away. No, I wasn't going to give him the satisfaction of an outburst. Of giving him the power to explain himself. I packed my bags, plastered a smile on my face, and boarded the flight to New York with Jack and his family. Acting as if everything were normal. But nothing was normal. I could feel the weight of the betrayal growing inside me. But I would wait. I would let the events unfold. And when they did, I would be ready. I had already started planning my next move. I was done being the silent, supportive wife in a marriage that was built on appearances. It was time to take control. As we arrived in New York, I watched Jack's interactions with his family. The way they treated me like I didn't belong. The subtle remarks. The looks exchanged behind my back. The way they talked about me as though I was just a part of their social experiment. Not a person with feelings. Each day felt like a slow burn. Each moment more suffocating than the last. And all the while, I kept collecting the pieces. Each email, each document, each hidden detail that would expose the truth. And when the time came, I would make sure they all saw the truth. No matter how painful it might be for them. The cracks in their perfect world were becoming clearer by the minute. And as much as they had tried to break me, I realized something. I wasn't the one who was broken. They were. By the time the morning of Eleanor's birthday arrived, I had already made my decision. I had nothing left to lose. The events of the past few days had broken something in me. But not in the way I thought they would. It wasn't defeat that I felt, it was liberation. A quiet, resolute sense of clarity had settled in my chest. I had been running in circles for years. Trying to please a family that would never accept me. Trying to fit into a world that never had a place for someone like me. But no more. Today, I would take back what was rightfully mine. My dignity, my autonomy, my voice. The day had been planned meticulously, just as I had planned everything else in my life. A private tour of a famous New York art gallery. Lunch at an exclusive vineyard outside the city. And then back to the restaurant for the grand dinner. It all sounded perfect. To anyone else, it would have appeared flawless. But to me, it was just another act in the charade that had been my marriage. I woke up early that morning, making sure I was ready before Jack and his family. I had no intention of participating in the charade any longer. I couldn't, as much as I had once loved Jack. As much as I had once hoped to build a life with him. I now realized that it was all built on a foundation of lies. This wasn't a partnership. It was a performance. A carefully orchestrated act in which I was simply a supporting character. Never the star. And now, I would rewrite the script. I spent the morning in solitude, quietly preparing myself for what was about to come. I slipped into the midnight blue gown I had bought specifically for tonight. A final statement of strength. As I looked at myself in the mirror, I saw the woman I had become. Strong, independent, ready. It was time. I made my way to the restaurant early, as any good event planner would. The venue was a rooftop restaurant with a stunning view of the city skyline. It was supposed to be the perfect setting for Eleanor's birthday, a luxurious, Michelin-starred experience. But today, it would be the stage for something much more profound. I walked through the restaurant, inspecting every detail, ensuring that everything was exactly as I had planned. The hand-calligraphed place cards, the peonies and roses carefully arranged on the tables, the 7-course tasting menu, all of it was flawless. But it wasn't for them. It was for me. This was my last act. My final masterpiece. I had created this evening. And I would make sure it would be remembered, not for the extravagant decorations or the perfect meal, but for the message it would send. A message of reclaiming power. Of standing up when you've been pushed down for too long. After my inspection, I returned to the hotel to change into my gown and apply my makeup with steady hands. I could feel the tension in my chest. But it was different this time. It wasn't the anxious flutter of uncertainty. It was the calm before the storm. I was ready. I had done everything I could to prepare for this moment. And now, it was in my hands. As I entered the lobby to meet the family, I saw them standing together, their faces illuminated by the soft light of the chandelier. They looked every bit the picture of elegance. The picture of a family in control. But underneath it all, I knew what they were hiding. I knew the cracks in their perfect facade. I had seen enough to know that their world was crumbling. And tonight, I would be the one to make sure it all came to light. Jack saw me first, his eyes widening slightly as if seeing me for the first time in a long time. Eleanor smiled, a tight, controlled smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Anna, darling, you look lovely," she said, her voice cool and calculated. I nodded politely but said nothing, my heart steady in my chest. I wasn't afraid anymore. It was time for them to face the consequences of their actions. The drive to the restaurant was filled with forced conversation, casual chatter about the day's activities. It was all noise to me. I was no longer part of their world. And tonight, I would make sure they knew it. As we ascended in the elevator to the rooftop, I could feel the weight of their eyes on me. Jack placed his hand on my back, a gesture that once felt intimate but now seemed empty, hollow. When we reached the terrace, the sight before me was everything I had worked for. The candlelight reflected off the crystal glasses. The silverware gleamed, and the long table was set perfectly. But as I approached, I saw it, the empty seat. My seat, the seat they had deliberately removed from the table. And then, it hit me, they had planned it all. This was their final attempt to push me out. To humiliate me publicly in front of their friends. To make me the outcast in their carefully constructed world. But I wasn't going to play by their rules. Not anymore. I straightened my shoulders, took a deep breath, and spoke the words that would change everything. "Seems I'm not family." The table went silent. The family stared at me, shock and confusion spreading across their faces. Jack's expression faltered for a moment. But then he regained his composure. He chuckled, his voice shaky, and said, "Oops, guess we miscounted." But the laughter didn't come. The smiles faded. I walked away from the table. From them, with my head held high. I had done what I came to do. They had tried to break me, to push me aside, but in the end, it was they who would be left to face the consequences of their actions. And me? I was finally free. As I walked away from the table, I felt a strange sense of relief wash over me. The echoes of their voices, the stares, the attempts to undermine me, they no longer held power. I wasn't the broken woman they had tried to mold me into. I was stronger, more determined than ever before. The years I had spent trying to fit into their world were behind me. And with each step I took, I felt more and more like the woman I was always meant to be. Later that evening, as the chaos unfolded around them, I sat in a small cafe across from the restaurant, watching the storm I had set in motion. Jack's messages flooded my phone. But I ignored them. I had made my peace with the truth. His family's facade was crumbling. And I had been the one to expose it. The empire they had built was no longer untouchable. It didn't feel like revenge, it felt like freedom. Freedom from a marriage built on appearances. Freedom from a family that would never truly accept me. The woman they had tried to belittle. The event planner they had dismissed. Had turned the tables. I was no longer an accessory in their narrative. I was reclaiming my story. By the time I boarded the flight back to Boston, I knew I was walking away with more than just a divorce. I was walking away with the confidence to live my life on my own terms. The world, once so overwhelming and uncertain, now felt full of possibilities. If you've ever felt like an outsider, rejected by the very people you thought would accept you, then this story might resonate with you. It's a reminder that sometimes the most powerful moments in life come when we finally take control of our own narrative. To stay updated with more stories of empowerment, love, and self-discovery, make sure to subscribe to our channel and join us on this incredible journey.